Religion in the Roman Republic. Introduction. To adhere to the customs of the ancestors, the state religion was, for the Romans, a matter of simple patriotism. In this modern age, where the separation of church and state is continually emphasized, it is easy to forget that things were not always so. In ancient Rome, religion and the state were not only combined, they defined each other. In ancient Rome, religion was inseparable from the state. Field Marshal Lord Montgomery once said, "When you command great numbers of men, you find the emotional forces bottled up in them very strong." The Romans realized that they had to guide the emotions of their subjects into patriotic channels. In ancient Rome, patriotism and state religion were indistinguishable. Religion decided whether the Romans would declare war or have peace. Religion decided when generals fought and when they retreated. Religion decided whether the decisions of the Senate would stand or be declared void. Religion was behind the founding legends of ancient Rome. Religion was a vital part of Rome's history, as can be shown by looking at its origin, its prominence in the Roman political scene, and its decline. Origins. The legends about the founding of Rome were developed to establish the state religion. By the time of Augustus, these legends were firmly established, aided by the works of Livius and Virgilius. How much of these traditions were believed, if they were believed at all, during the early Republic? This is somewhat a matter of speculation, but we do know a little. Livius himself admits that the origin of Rome is uncertain, but asserts that if any city deserved to have a miraculous origin, Rome did. If the Romans were to believe that the service of the gods was so intricately connected with the welfare of Rome, it was necessary to establish a history of the relationship of the gods with the city of Rome, as well as create an explanation for the dependence of Rome on the gods. The legend of Aeneas, who was directed by the gods to settle in Italy in anticipation of the future founding of Rome, was created to do just that. Likewise, the story of the legendary twins, Romulus and Remus, who were descended from the god Mars and founded the city of Rome, also explained Rome's religious situation. The connection of the founding of Rome with the Trojan War, about which Virgilius wrote his Aeneid, had been established by the 3rd century BC, and so was not questioned in any history written after this period. Although there were several different versions of this story, such as Odysseus founding the city of Rome instead of Aeneas, or the two enemies, Odysseus and Aeneas, reconciling at the founding of the city. These many different versions were due to the mindset of the Roman writer. A Roman writer would not find any virtue in simply rewriting what someone else had already written. But any Roman writing about the foundation of the city would make his additions to the legend. It is likely that the story of Romulus and Remus started out as a separate legend and was later synchronized with the story of Aeneas. We know that the story existed at least as early as 286 BC, since a coin that was dated to that year was found with a wolf suckling 2 infants. The famous bronze statue of the Capitoline wolf, which is much older, may or may not be evidence of the legend existing in the early Roman Republic. The 2 children nursing from the wolf were added later. From these legends, we know that Romans considered Rome to be a sacred city, and that it had the blessings of the gods. It also shows that the Romans believed serving the gods and serving Rome to be one and the same. According to tradition, Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome, established the practice of formal religion as it continued throughout the Republic. How much truth there is to this, we can't say with any certainty. But scholars now recognize that it is unlikely the 7 kings of Rome are purely fictional. The Latin language indicates the Romans were at one time very familiar with kings. The last kings of Rome, the Tarquins, although portrayed as typical Greek tyrants by Roman historians, have a name that is Etruscan. This implies that there was an Etruscan domination at the end of the regal period. There is other evidence for this. The buildings built during this period in Rome were on a scale not equaled for centuries afterwards. There are reluctant admissions to Etruscan domination in Roman literature, and some Roman rituals and ornaments indicate that the Etruscans once held supreme authority. Since it is known that the Etruscans were heading south towards Campania at the end of the 7th century, it is likely they would have made an effort to secure the passage of the Tiber at Rome, which lay directly in their route. From all this evidence, it can safely be concluded that Rome was ruled by Etruscan princes around the end of the 5th century, but that Etruscans were never present in Rome in large numbers. So, if the Etruscans influenced Roman culture and religion, what were the Etruscans like? Their origin is unknown, but they appeared to have little culture of their own. At first, they imitated the Phoenicians, but then, after the Greeks achieved domination, the Etruscans took on Greek culture. They even went so far as to hire Greek craftsmen to ensure that their cities would resemble those of the Greeks. The most important thing the Etruscans did for Rome was to erect a temple to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva on the Capitoline Hill. This gave the fledgling city of Rome a feeling of unity. It also established the 3 gods in Roman religion. The Etruscans were also probably responsible for introducing the concept of anthropomorphic deities to the Romans, as well as the practice of augury. Etruscan artists painted terracotta ornaments for the new Capitoline Temple, and the Etruscans also made the famous Capitoline statue of Jupiter. Jus Divinum. Since the Romans believed the foundation of their empire was preordained by the gods, it is only natural that religion would play an important part in their government. All parts of the Roman law covering religion were referred to generally as Jus Divinum, or sacred law. As mentioned above, tradition credits Numa Pompilius with establishing most of it. Before we delve into the history of the Republic, it is worth commenting on the accuracy of the ancient sources. No contemporary writer of the early or middle Republic has survived. Most of the knowledge we have about this period comes from Livius and other writers of the 1st century or later. The lateness is enough in itself to doubt the accuracy of these histories. It has also been suggested that the great Roman families of the late Republic exaggerated or possibly made up the deeds of their ancestors. Also, many ancient historians looked for precedents to their own times in the past, and if the precedents were not there, they added them. There is good reason to believe much of these ancient sources, however. Livius and the others based their history on the Annals Maximi, discussed below, which were published in 125 BC by the Pontifex Maximus Mucius Scaevola. A good example of religion acting side by side with the state is the 12 Tables. The 12 Tables were essentially putting into law the existing Roman customs, and was done at the request of the plebeians to take power away from the patricians. According to tradition, the tables were formed in 545 BC. Although they were destroyed by the Gauls in 390 BC, much of it has survived in the form of quotations by other ancient writers. Each of the 12 tables deals with a different part of the law. Table 10 deals with the sacred law. Most of the laws in Table 10 deal with funerals, and many of them are designed to prevent excess, such as the law that a man may not have more than one funeral, or the law that there was to be no costly sprinkling at funerals. There is also a law that no man should be buried within the boundaries of Rome. The majority of the Jus Divinium, however, dealt with the various religious officials under it. Although the ancient Romans had several offices that were purely religious, in theory, even the most secular office was supposed to be a religious one. The Lex Sacrati made all officials of the Republic sacred. Because of the obvious abuses such a law lends itself to, it was later modified to mean that the officials were sacred in the sense they were under the protection of the gods, and any attempt to do physical harm to them would be met with retribution by the Roman government on behalf of the gods. The censors are a good example of an office that had both secular and religious duties. They were arguably the most powerful office in the whole Republic because of the religious power behind them. The office of the censors was formed in 443 BC. Among other things, it was their duty to maintain an official list of the citizens, to maintain public morals, and to supervise the leasing of public areas and buildings. At first, the censors could only be patricians. In 351 BC, the office was open to plebeians. The leges publii, passed in 339 BC, dictated that at least one censor must be a plebeian. The censors achieved their greatest power in 312 BC, when they were given the power to keep senatorial rolls and expel any senators who acted against public morality, a duty formerly held by the consuls. The censors had the power to change the status of any man, no matter what class of citizenship the man belonged to. Men were demoted in status for offenses such as disregarding religious or traditional values. Aulus Gellius notes that some interesting cases of punishment dealt out by the censors. If land had gone unattended, the owner was reduced to the lowest class of citizenship. If a knight did not take good care of his horse, the same would happen. Aulus Gellius even cites a case where the censors were trying a man for yawning in court because it indicated his mind had been wandering. The man was only able to escape punishment by swearing that the yawn had come over him despite his resistance. The most important duty of the censors was the religious purification of both the people and the priests, known as the lustrum. This occurred at first every 4 years, but was changed in 209 BC to every 5 years. The Romans had many varieties of priests, and it was the responsibility of the censors to put the priests into different colleges. Of these, the Romans had 4 important colleges: the Decemviri, the College of Augurs, the College of Fetals, and the College of Pontiffs. The College of Decemviri was one of the most influential colleges. Decemviri is Latin for Board of 10. Although the name changed when they were increased to 15 in Sulla's time. It was this group that was responsible for the Sibylline books. In the 5th century BC, the practice was developed of consulting the oracle at Sibyl at Cumae, which was a Greek city in Campania. The words of the Sibyl were written down and collected in Greek into the Sibylline books and entrusted to the Decemviri. In times of crisis, they would consult the Sibylline books, usually with the result of ordering the introduction of a new Greek god or a Greek religious site. In doing so, they were responsible for the Hellenization of the Roman state religion. The last innovation they made was in 205 BC, the introduction of the goddess Magna Mater from Pessinus in Asia Minor. The temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus was destroyed by fire in 83 BC, and the Sibylline books were lost with it. A search was conducted over the whole Roman Empire for any prophecies that had survived. These prophecies were copied and sent back to Rome. In this way, the Sibylline books were reconstructed, although the Romans themselves wondered if all of the prophecies had been recovered, or if some fake prophecies had made their way into the new books. The College of Augurs also had great political power, for they were responsible for the auspices. The auspices were taken before every important act of state, and if they were found to be unfavorable, business for that day was stopped. The Senate would not meet, nor would the army commander lead his troops into battle. It is for this reason that Cicero claimed the College of Augurs were the most powerful group in the Roman Empire. The Augurs, however, did not actually take the auspices. That privilege was reserved for a Roman official possessing imperium. The Augurs were responsible for the preparation and interpretation of the auspices. However, a task much more important. At first, auspices concerned only the flight of birds, but it was expanded to include other methods. Festus writes, the augurs observe 5 types of signs: from lightning, from birds, from the feeding of sacred chickens, from 4-footed animals, and from portents. Augurs used a secret method to interpret the auspices, one that was taught to other augurs but never written down. In a speech after his exile, Cicero gives numerous examples of the importance of following the auspices. When Flaminius was preparing to fight Hannibal, an augur reminded him to take the auspices. Flaminius fed the sacred chickens, but they would not eat. The augur warned him not to go into battle. Flaminius replied, "Fine auspices indeed, if we may only fight when the chickens are hungry, but must do nothing if they are full." Flaminius suffered a terrible defeat and was killed. In another example, Publius Claudius, a commander of a fleet in the First Punic War, ordered the sacred chickens thrown overboard when they refused to eat, saying, "Let them drink, since they will not eat." As a result, his colleague Junus lost his entire fleet in a storm, and Claudius was condemned by the Roman people. The Fetals were the third college, in charge of war and peace. The ancient college of 20 members was responsible for international relations and functioned especially in rituals attending the declaration of war, conclusion of treaties, protection of foreign ambassadors at Rome, and extradition. It was the duty of the Fetials to make sure that Rome did not enter into an unjust war against a country in alliance with them. If another country violated the treaty first, then the Fetials functioned as ambassadors. One Fetial was chosen by his colleagues, put on a sacred robe and insignia, and went into the city which had done Rome wrong. Stopping at the border, he took an oath to the gods, asking if what the city was accused of was true. If it was not true, the Fetial asked the gods to punish Rome for making a false accusation. Entering the city, the Fetial would repeat the oath in the presence of the first person he came across. After going through several other rituals, the Fetial made his demand to the city. The city was given 10 days to consider it, after which the Fetial made his demands another time. After 30 days, the Fetial returned home and informed the senators that if they wished to vote for war, the gods had no problem with it. If the Senate decided to declare war, the Fetials went through another ceremony in which the gods were again called to witness Rome's actions. War was officially declared when a Fetial threw a spear across the border. Fetials were also responsible for the ceremony of a peace treaty, and again the gods were called as witnesses. If peace was made by generals without consulting the Fetials, it was invalid, and the Fetials would investigate it. Once peace was made, it was the duty of the Fetials to make sure Rome kept her end of the bargain. A group subordinate to the Fetials were the Sodales. These priests were allowed to act only as one unified body, not allowing for individual opinions. They were concerned with annual rites. Particularly active among the Sodales were a group called Salines, the priests of Mars. They were active in March and October, the opening and closing of campaigning season. The head of all the other colleges and all other religious functions was the College of Pontiffs. The word pontifex means bridge builder, and it was presumed by the later Romans that this originated from the duty of the pontiffs to build bridges. The pontiffs were responsible for the presentation and interpretation of the Ius Divinum, as well as being Rome's earliest jurists, powerful in civil as well as criminal law. The college started out with 3 pontiffs, then was consequently increased to 6, 9, 15, and at last to 16 by Julius Caesar. The Lex Olgunia, passed in 300 BC, dictated that at least half the number of pontiffs must be plebeians. The pontiffs were the judges of all religious cases, whether private citizens, magistrates, or priests were involved. They made laws for the observance of any religious rite. They investigated the conduct of any magistrate who performed any religious duty, and they took care that all employed in religious functions committed no errors. They were not liable to prosecution or punishment, nor were they held accountable to the Senate or the people in religious matters. The head of the Pontiff College and the Roman religion was the Pontiff Maximus. Until 212 BC, the Pontifex Maximus was chosen by the other pontiffs. After 212 BC, the people voted for the Pontiff Maximus, although interestingly, not by a majority. Of Rome's 35 tribes, 17 were chosen by a lot to vote for the Pontifex Maximus. In addition to a general supervision of the state religion, the Pontifex Maximus was also responsible for keeping the records of the state, the Annals Maximi. The Pontifex Maximus was also in charge of the calendar and decided on which days state business could be performed, dies factus. The Pontifex Maximus was responsible for making sure the lunar calendar corresponded with the solar year. To do this, an intercalary month was added every 2 years. When Julius Caesar was Pontifex Maximus, he got rid of the intercalary month by increasing the year to 365 days and establishing the leap year. Besides these 4 main colleges, there were several other colleges as well. The Collegia Compitulia was concerned with the worship of the Lares at the Compita. The Collegium Capitolinorum was responsible for the Ludi Capitolini, the Capitoline Games. The Collegium Mercatorum presided over the Temple of Mercury. There were many other minor colleges as well. King Numa is credited with establishing all of the colleges. At first, the priests in the college were appointed by a king. Then, once the Republic began, whenever there was a vacancy in one of the colleges, the existing members would decide who would fill it. After the Lex Domitia was passed, the people themselves would vote on who is included in the colleges. The Vestal Virgins were under the direct authority